welcome to A Conversation With, brought to you by Puzzles of Color. Today we're speaking with my good friend, Melissa Alvarez. We're going to speak about the stresses of parenthood, raising triplets, as well as the benefits of therapy and puzzling. So please welcome Melissa Alvarez.
Hi.
Melissa, good to see you
Hi.
again.
Yeah.
How you been? I'd like to learn a little, tell people about yourself a little bit.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Melissa, Melissa Alvarez. I am, my husband and I are both artists. We live in the Dallas area, like William and Erica do. Um, and I am currently a stay-at-home mom, and I have 4 kids, 4 and under, and I love to do puzzles.
Awesome. Well, how about you tell us a little bit about how mental health became important to you? Like, how did you get into mental health?
Yeah. So I think I've always had anxiety, and I didn't really know that that's what it was. Like, I didn't have an actual like label for it, honestly, till probably college sometime. And I've known, I think for the last maybe 20, 15 years that I've had depression kind of on and off at, some level of it, kind of on and off. But yeah, it wasn't until about college when I really realized like, oh, have anxiety, like pretty bad. And so it wasn't until I think sometime in college or sometime after that I really started learning about my mental health. But it wasn't really, really talked about a lot until about then anyway. So like it wasn't really something like anxiety wasn't something people really talked about 20 years ago.
Mhm.
So
So
I didn't
true.
really have a way to define it or really determine what it actually was. I just thought, I don't know if this is how my brain works,
Yeah.
which it is, but
Yeah.
I didn't know why.
Yeah. It's always interesting. I feel like, they say that like in college is when, or like around that age, like around the 18 to 20 or whatever, is
Mhm.
when like a lot of like mental health starts to kind of manifest itself, even though you're saying that you had it earlier. But like, I always feel like the fact that colleges, like being in a college campus, the fact that they have like the free mental health resources is such an amazing, benefit. Because that is kind of like when things start to come to a head. And so like having, like I know I went to therapy in college for the first time because it was like, oh, well, I'm feeling a certain way and there's this free resource. Let's go ahead and take advantage. Like, hey, I'm paying my tuition. Like,
Right.
I'm also being the cheap person that I am. I'm like, if I'm paying for it, I'm going to get it. Okay, I'm going to use it.
Yeah, exactly.
I printed so
But
much stuff
I
and I
don't
was like,
think
I got
like,
all this money.
yeah, I don't think like my high school or any of my like lower schools ever talked about mental health, and I don't know if it
Right.
was just because it was that era, in that time. But yeah, I don't think I really even heard about mental health until college and really was able to, I mean, you hear about, really tragic things, like people being really depressed and then,
Yeah.
attempting suicide or actually succeeding in that. And so like that I felt like was like, okay, but that's not me. But not, there's different like levels, and there's, and I think it fluctuates a lot. And so I think, you can quickly be like, oh, well, I'm not suicidal, but I am still depressed, and I think both of those things can exist, but I just don't think it just wasn't talked about back then, in
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
2000s and earlier. It just wasn't
Yeah, I
That is
definitely think
as
it's
popular.
that's a great point about like the levels of like, if it's not some extreme thing, then people
Right.
kind of think like, I don't need to go to therapy. I don't need to do
Right.
anything because like I'm just having a bad day or a bad month or whatever, like it,
Right.
and it can really like, before you know it, it's you've been in this funk for a long time, but you're like, well, but I'm not suicide. I'm not this
Right.
extreme thing. So there was nothing. So then what can be done?
Right.
So yeah, that's a great point.
Well, and to that, exactly, like people have such a bad, well, I think it's less now significantly, but people have had such a bad stigma with therapy in general and like going to shrink and like, oh, something's wrong with you, or that's just something you don't talk about. I think, in families and friendships and stuff like that, that's just like was not talked about for a long time. And it was like a personal struggle. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, like really shameful to admit that you go to therapy, when I think nowadays, thankfully, I really don't think it has that same weight. I think it is a lot more culturally accepted and understood as not being those extremes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I definitely. I was going to say the same. It's like I think it was just the time period, and I think after we become more sensitive to a lot more issues, a lot more topics,
Yeah.
because a lot of mental health had related to people mistreatment of people. I don't know, that's pretty true, but just in general, like how you treat people and how they, just be like bullying and stuff like that. How it's just
Mhm.
somewhat normalized, or you have to just accept it and try to get over it. But that really messes you mentally, and you have to. Now we're more sensitive, recognizing that as an issue, people addressing it more. It's really have to change the whole culture around it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think just normalizing and having people in your life that um, go to therapy, that aren't that extreme of like we said earlier, suicidal, oh, okay, it helps normalize it a lot. Like, oh, my
Mm-hmm.
friend who I know dearly, and is very normal,
Yeah.
but has things in their life that they struggle with, like everyone does. Like, I
yeah,
personally think anyone would benefit from therapy at any given time. There is something, and sadly, in everybody's lives that, would be beneficial to like work through in therapy, and that doesn't mean like that they need to go to therapy for their whole lives, but like there are things that we hold on to, or things that we've experienced, or things that have happened to us, that are really beneficial to talk to somebody who's completely outside of the situation, completely unbiased, to
yeah.
get just a different perspective on. I think that's so healthy.
Yeah, I don't even just for like talking about it, just talking it out with
Yeah.
somebody who, like I said, is not can't judge you the same way as somebody in the situation.
Yeah.
That's probably definitely beneficial. I've been elected to therapy for a while, but I think I might, there's actually like my friends, they went to like couples therapy, and they did through the schools or whatever like that. Some schools that have like the students to do therapy for you. It's a little cheaper. So I might go that route. I might go that route just so I can like, test it out, see how I like it, see like, okay, man, I need to get real therapy, or like not real, but a professional therapist. But no, I think I had definitely seen like the benefits of just talking it out. Because I know even for me, I have ideas or things I want to say, but I'm like, I might not say it because I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings or anything like that. But
Mhm.
I think it's definitely a good way to like vent and just low key just figure out all things that's going on in your head and get it all out.
Yeah, for sure. But I think also like friendships can be really helpful in that too. Like trusted relationships that you have,
Yeah,
um, can be really helpful. And, I don't think all situations need therapy. And I don't think, you know, um, yeah, I don't think every situation has to result in therapy, whatever. But I think having trusted friendships and, people you can talk through things with, and, be able to be honest with each other back and forth, I think is also really essential. And having those relationships where you can be like, I'm having a really sucky day, and this is how I'm perceiving the situation, and if you have a really great friendship with someone, and you have that relationship where they can speak honestly true to you, like speak truth into your life, they can be like, hey, you're blowing this out of proportion, and like sometimes you need to hear that, like, I'm not seeing this correctly, or you are validated in this, you should speak, stand up for yourself, or something like that. I think having friendships is, you know, deep friendships that, you really trust the other person, or a group of people, I think is also really essential. I think that's really helpful.
In the last year, I know that's something that like people have been experiencing, with the isolation or whatever, people have been experiencing a different level of issues, or, things are kind of maybe, coming back to them. How would you say the last year has affected you?
Yeah, I think my current mental health struggles started before this last year, but I think this last year is kind of um, amplified them in a way, just because of, like you said, with COVID, there's been, you know, a lot of isolation, a lot of just a disruption in our normal life. And that's really challenging for everybody. And you know, I've heard so many, like this last year, I've heard so many ads like on podcasts and stuff like that for like mental health resources, and I think that's really awesome.
Yeah.
You know, and there's so many like virtual therapy. You could live in a completely different city or state or country even than your mental health you know, counselor or therapist. And I think that's really cool. But yeah, for me personally, this last year, I think it's just kind of amplified things. I think I'm a really extroverted person and I like being around people. And thankfully I have a lot of people in my family, so I'm never without people. But like sometimes I just want different people. And so this year's been a little challenging in that. And thankfully through like platforms like this, like Zoom, you know, I am still able to hang out with people. You know, I have been able to hang out with people. And that's been really beneficial. But I think, yeah, like just the feeling stuck has really kind of amplified it a little bit, just like where my mental state was already.
Who do you have in your life that is like that friend for you, and how do you go about finding those people?
Yeah. So my husband's a good one. You know, we're best friends, and so that's super helpful. And he really struggles with a lot of depression as well, sadly. And so thankfully our like high depression days are staggered, and they're usually not like the same. So if I'm like really feeling like in the pits one day, he's typically not. So that's helpful. But if we're both feeling bad, then that's not. But I have a core group of best friends that we've been friends since before elementary school. We were in like ballet and tap together, and we've still been friends for, you know, almost 30 years now. So we talk all the time. And, you know, because we have that 30 years of friendship and, you know, such a deep friendship that we talk every day, like almost all day. You know, we've seen each other through all parts of our lives. And so I think they're really good people to, you know, help remind me of things I've gone through or situations, you know, we've been through. And yeah, so they're very helpful. And then I do have another friend who also struggles with mental health stuff. And she is another really great person to talk to. Just to be like, hey, I'm really struggling today. And she's just a good person to vent to that is like no judgments, nothing. And I think having those friendships is just really helpful. And I think, you know, just if someone doesn't have those friendships, I think maybe just being the first one to be like vulnerable and honest. Like I'm a really honest
Yeah.
person, and I'm going to tell you like it is. You know, not in a bad way. I'm just really honest about our situation, our life and all that. And I think sometimes people are really fearful of doing that because they don't want to be judged. But I think if you know, if you instigate that, I think it's really helpful to show other people like, hey, it's okay to be honest with me. And, you know, I'm going to be honest with you. And you know, I want to share the burdens of your life as well. So I think kind of being the first one, kind of instigate that and be like, hey, my mental health is not great right now. And this is kind of the situation. How are you doing? You know, like it's been a sucky year for everybody. Like, how are you doing? You know, going back to normal life and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think the fact that everybody has been going through a rough year. I mean, you know, and of course, I mean, I don't want to say that 2020 was terrible for everybody. I mean, some people, you know, for me, I had a baby and I was able to spend extra time at home with her. So I know that it wasn't bad for everybody, but it definitely was a change from the norm. And
Right.
so I think that actually kind of opens up the opportunity to have those conversations with people because everybody, you know, everybody was going through the same thing together in that, you know, your life was turned around and changed. So.
Yeah.
I know you have kids as well, Melissa. Four of them to be exact, and
I have
a set of
four
triplets.
and under. Yeah, and three of them are triplets.
Yeah. So how is that? How was that like that? That I guess you're still in it, but like the time period of just having a child, three of them at once, and just how it affected you and how you were able to like kind of get through that, or still going through that.
Yeah, still going through for sure.
Yes.
Um, yeah, it's been very challenging, just in a lot of ways. Before we had our first daughter, who's about to be 5, I was like super okay with not having any kids. Like I was really okay with that option of life. And so, but we eventually came to the decision that we did want to have kids. And so we had Sailor, and that was really fun and great. And then I was like, you know what? I think I'm good. I think like an only child is great.
uh,
I don't think I need any more. And then we surprise got pregnant with triplets. And that is very challenging, especially I think for me, who was so okay with not having any kids, or not having any more kids.
uh,
That was very traumatic. And
the
honestly, like
definition of
really messed with my brain, like a lot,
yeah.
where I went to the doctor thinking I had hormonal imbalance issues. And it was just like the trauma of surprise getting pregnant with triplets. Like that's just a lot. And then on top of that, my pregnancy with them was really, really rare and really high risk. And it's honestly like a miracle that they're all alive and okay. And then my birth was really traumatic. I lived in the hospital for a long time, and then they lived in the hospital for a long time. So that was also, just adding on to it. And then when they came home, it was just like the weight, like so much weight of like having 3 newborn babies to take care of at the same time, plus a very needy but very sweet toddler. Yeah, like when they were born, we had 4 kids 2 and under, and like
Wow.
I don't recommend that to anyone. That's a
My
lot.
goodness.
And so our whole life changed. Like I was a professional photographer. I got to be a stay-at-home mom and still do my art. And when I got pregnant with them, I basically had to completely stop then, because my pregnancy was so high risk, and a lot of things just kind of going with that. And so I'm not even able to work like at all, and have to rely on a lot of help. And I'm very independent. And so, and like, yeah, bossy, and I like to do all my own things. And so it's been very challenging for me to, like, I still have to have help all the time. And that's really hard for me. And so just all of that has really been difficult, and still is very difficult. Like we're potty training them right now, and I just wouldn't wish potty training triplets on my worst enemy. Like it's the worst thing ever. Like almost as bad as, night feedings and all the early stuff too. Like it's really bad.
Oh
So,
my God.
so yeah, like through all that, I've definitely had to go to therapy a lot. And so like I'm in therapy, my husband's in therapy, my oldest daughter, she's in therapy. Like it's been completely life-changing for all of us. And like we're still processing it. Like we're still really struggling with it like every day. And so yeah, the I've kind of, like I said earlier, like always had, kind of some twinge of depression kind of on and off, but this has like definitely like amplified my depression and anxiety too. So it's not been fun, but thankfully, um, you know, therapy is so easily accessible, and we have really great health insurance. So we have a copay for health, like mental health. And so that's really helpful as well, because I know therapy can be really expensive. And so we're really, really blessed to have that. Um, and yeah, William, like you were saying earlier about how there are, therapy students like who have graduated, like finished their schooling, they're just working on hours. Like we have been able to, see people like that as well. Like my daughter went to like traditional counseling, but like virtually with a woman who is still in her training hours. And so that was free. And that
Yeah,
was
exactly.
really,
Yeah.
really helpful. I mean, not for a 3-year-old on Zoom. So now she's in play therapy, which is it's way more suited for her age and
Yeah.
just so much more beneficial. But yeah, there are a lot of resources now. If your insurance doesn't cover it, they do have, the people who are still getting their hours and still in training and stuff. And like interns, I think is what they're called. But yeah, our insurance really has a great copay on it as well. So, our rates are a lot better. And then some companies even have like cash pay rates, where their rates for cash pay is a lot less. So that's really great too. But yeah, so we are very pro counseling, and all go. Everyone who can talk is going to counseling.
Well, the fact that like like we were talking about, like that mental health was not like really talked about 20 years ago or whatever,
Right.
The fact that it is more well accepted in the insurances are covering it now, because before it was like you need to pay, you're on your own, and
Right.
if you can't afford it, then you're out of luck. So I'm glad that like it is becoming a lot more of a normal thing, and more and more insurances are covering it so that people can get the help that they need. But so I was gonna ask about like how you plan to address mental health with your kids. I mean, I know you said your husband has depression issues and you've had depression issues, and so but it looks like, I mean, if you have a daughter already in therapy at 3, like that it's kind of something that you're going to grow up with, which is really amazing.
Yeah. So since it's such a big thing in our, in our marriage, like it's definitely a big thing in our family. And like, we really want to, we don't want to be like, oh, this is a secret, like we don't want to hide that, because that's a part of our life and that's a part of our everyday struggle. And, I mean, we don't love it. We'd rather not, but like, that's a reality of our life. And so I don't want to like hide that from her. I don't want, or our other daughters too. I think, having those conversations is really helpful for them to be understanding. I mean, as understanding as a 4-year-old can be, like for them to be understanding and know like, hey, I am really struggling with things. And it's, cause I think kids sometimes, like a lot of times, have this like, impression that parents know everything and they've like got it all figured out. And like, oh my gosh, that is the furthest from the truth. Like, I have no idea what I'm doing. And I have 4 kids, like no idea. And so I think, talking about mental health, like your personal mental health is really good with kids. I really advocate for that. But then also like it helps talk about how are her feelings. And, we have a lot of books about feelings, and it talks a lot about all the different feelings and like how we'd like to be happy and joyful and excited all the time, but that's just like not reality, and feelings come and go and stuff like that. So we talk a lot about feelings and emotions, and we try to like talk through those so that she knows how to process them, because she has a lot of anger, and a lot of our oldest does. And I don't struggle with that as much. So I think that's a really helpful thing for therapy, because, she can talk through that. And I just like, I don't understand that struggle as well. So I want her to be able to have resources and know how to address that when she is feeling those really intense feelings. Cause I don't get it, and I want to help her, but I don't know how. So I think therapy and stuff like that, and just talking through things is really helpful. It takes a lot of time though, and a lot of effort, which I don't always have. And so like, oh, it sounds great that we talk about feelings, but like we do, but it's like when we can. But yeah, so I think talking through things and just being honest about like where you are, and like people around you too, like, hey, like it's not just mommy and daddy that go to therapy. Like a lot of our friends, a lot of people in our lives You know, I have family members in therapy and counseling and stuff. And like her knowing that I think is really helpful. And it helps break down that stigma even more, you know,
Exactly.
if there is any of that left, or what is left. You know, I think there'll always be some sort of stigma. But I think, you know, that just takes away like, hey, this is pretty normal, you know, like a lot of people in our country struggle with mental health stuff. In this day and age. And, you know, and I think, you know, her knowing that it's really normal. And I mean, it sucks. It's not great, but you're not the only one. And I think that's really, really helpful.
Yeah,
Really.
my mom is reading well, she just finished a book and I wish I remember the name of it. But she was saying that like basically it talks about how like, you know, you need to teach your kids that like happiness is not something that you're always going to have. And that, you know, like basically she said to me like, you know, I always have had a get over it type of attitude about a lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yes,
she's
yes, you
like,
have.
after I read this book, I realized I probably should have listened to you guys more. And I'm like, oh, great, thanks. I mean, I'm 30 now, but okay. A little late for all that.
Yeah.
But she's like, you know, you should teach your kids younger. Like I know like my baby, you know, they especially when they're toddlers, they have these emotions they don't know how to necessarily, you know, convey. And it's like, okay, you're having a fit. That's okay. Like, you know, don't punish them for having a fit. Like they have to get through these emotions and they have to learn how to process them. And if you just kind of shut them down,
Right.
then they won't learn those things. So,
and they'll just stuff it down, you know, and not able to not fully process it. I think that's definitely something that I struggled with growing up. Like I was like, you know, because I've kind of been the same way like your mom. I'm like, well, get over it, you're fine. Like I don't like emotions. I don't like any of that. But I think, you know, I think all emotions are good. They just and needed to help us react and understand and even see how we really feel about things. But knowing what to do with them I think is really helpful.
yeah.
And knowing that they're okay. But like, you know, anger is okay. You can be angry about something, but you know, that turning violent, that's not okay.
Right.
You know? So I think, you know, definitely addressing what those feelings are, but and also like healthy ways to react in those feelings. But that's like stuff they got to talk through, you know. I don't think that's something we really come to on our own, especially at 4, you know, especially young, you know, maybe in college. but
Right.
yeah, I think those are really helpful tools, just for a healthier childhood.
So, like, besides therapy, what are other things that activities or things that you do like to help with your mental health or to keep your mental health in a good space?
Mm-hmm. So because mine is kind of like kid related
Yeah.
right now, just like not being around my kids is very helpful. And just like you know, I think a lot of it's like self-care is really, you know, kind of a big buzzword right now.
Yeah.
And like, I mean, I guess kind of self-care, but like more so for me, it's just like for me to be able to still be like a person that functions and is creative and intelligent and not having to just solve 2-year-old problems all day, you know, and like separate people fighting and stuff like that. So I think for me, just doing something that helps my brain work again and like, and, you know, problem solve and stuff like that in creative ways. And that's what I do as much as possible. So once the girls go to bed and bedtime happens, my husband and I will play like board games. So we're super into board games and like really difficult ones, like not like, I don't know, like basics like Monopoly and Life and stuff like that.
Those
Like
are
we
pretty
play really,
hard.
and I mean, you're
Monopoly
right.
is pretty
You're right.
complicated. You were right.
You're right. But like with 2 people though, like,
Oh
you know,
yeah.
we play a lot of
Yeah.
like two person like really critical thinking games, or like cooperative games, which are really fun too, that we like work together. So I think doing stuff like that is fun, but then also like I just need some space to not be around people for like a minute, because I typically have like 4 little people on me at all times. And that's just a lot. That's kind of like sensory overload. So I have been doing puzzles now, like since you guys started this awesome company. I was like, oh, well, I've got to support them, got to get a puzzle. And I never did puzzles growing up. And we just like, I mean, Sailor has puzzles. And so like we have kid puzzles.
Right.
But I never did like jigsaw puzzles until I bought one of y'all's puzzles. And so, and I really like loved it. I was like, oh my gosh, this is like a board game I can just play by myself and like be by myself and it be quiet, you know, or watch the show and like listen to stuff too. But I really enjoyed that because my husband's not like super into puzzles, which is totally fine. You know, different interests are very healthy. And so I've been really enjoying doing puzzles. So I'm like super awesome at puzzles now. And like, yeah, I'm puzzles has been really helpful.
Awesome. We're so glad to be able to bring that to you.
Yeah. I've been missing out like my whole life, y'all.
I think puzzles make sense for you because I feel like you can organize them. You know, that's something you're really good at, and you
I
control
love
it all.
order and organizing.
Yeah.
And then like I was a photographer in my previous life. And I did a lot of like photo manipulation and like digital retouching and stuff like that. And so like focusing in on details and stuff like that is something that I'm really good at. And so doing puzzles is really fun because it's like, okay, this is like not my image. This is not something I've worked on, but like I get to really see all of the parts and intricacies of this art. And, you know, being an artist, I love art. And so, you know, I really like doing anything art related. And so that's been really fun. Yeah, like, I don't know. And then just completing it was just so rewarding. And then, yeah, I'm super into puzzles. I like it a lot.
Great to hear. Good plug. But I think like me and Erica grew up doing puzzles, so I've always felt like that to be very relaxing and like just to be able to really, for me, it was always like a competition. Like I was competitive with it because I like to see the completed thing. I want to get it done fast as I can.
Of
And
course.
like so I would spend like literally, even when I started doing our puzzles, like the one right here, I would spend, this one took forever because it's not that easy. But I would spend a lot of time like just hours sitting at the table with like, you know, like said music in the background, whatever. And Amy's kind of doing the puzzle, kind of like not trying to do this puzzle because she's not into puzzles like that either. But I would spend hours just focused on that thing only, like have my phone down, which is good, you know, it could just be in the moment of that puzzle. And like I said, it's a competition to me. So I'm trying to like find that piece. I'm really just looking at it like one more puzzle, one more piece, you know. And for me, there's all like little victories every time I get one. I'm like, it's just a little victory, like, yes, I got that one, I got this one.
Yeah.
And I can finally see the image come together, come to life. So I mean, for me, that's just what it's been since I was little. And so that's still that way now.
I think being an artist, I really like tactile, I don't know, like doing things with my hands, you know, like actually like feeling things, you know, like, I don't know, like games on your phone is just not the same, you know, and just passively watching a show is just not the same. Like actually doing, you know, like manipulating puzzle pieces, you know, putting it together, or like game tokens or cards or whatever. Like, I don't know, it's just so much different. I think it's just so much better for your brain, you know, to work in a different way. I'm all for like low tech, no tech, you know.
All right. So we are coming to an end, but I do have one final question for you.
Okay.
And we talked about therapy a lot. What would you say is the best advice that you've received in therapy?
Yeah. So 2 things for me. I really like the grounding with the 5 senses exercise. It's a pretty common exercise that I know a lot of therapists like to use. But it's
I don't think I've ever done that.
Yeah, so it's whenever you're feeling really anxious, especially because I have a lot of anxiety as well, fun stuff. It's like, so you're supposed to like kind of be still and, you know, and breathe. A lot of it is like breathing exercises, and I like those a lot too. But the grounding, with the five senses is you're supposed to like sit and be still and then like look around and see, like try to point out five things you can see, and then four things you can touch, and then three things you can hear, and then two things you can smell, and then one thing you could taste. And that's supposed to kind of like, okay, while you're thinking through those things, it's supposed to kind of ground you and help you kind of like get out of a frantic or whatever state, and really help you kind of come down from that. But also, I think for me, something really helpful is just journaling. I think writing out things that I'm really stressed about or things I'm worried about or how I perceive a situation. I think writing it out is really helpful for me to process. You know, I think verbal processing is good too, but like writing it out and then like rereading over it and being like, that's what I'm worried about. Like, that's what I keep building up in my head. Like, this isn't that bad, you know, like, it's like it's really okay, or like, okay, this is where we're at, this is what's happening. So I think journaling and writing things out is really helpful for me, and so I journal a lot, and so I love looking back and being like, oh my gosh, that's what I was worried about. Like, that was nothing. Like, if only I could see my life now, you know, and how that's nowhere near a concern anymore, you know. And I think that kind of helps me put into perspective and remember things and be like, you know, the things that I'm dealing with right now, like, God, potty training, like, I'm going to look back, I think in about a month and be like, God, that was hard, but like, I'm okay. Like, we survived. So I think journaling helps me a whole lot, you know, writing things out.
That's great. I keep saying that I want to journal, and I need to actually do it because we're going through so much with the company and like having a baby my first year, and like I'm like, I just think about to like the day she was born, and I'm like, I don't remember much of that day, you know, like just like I wish I had, you know, something that I was keeping over the years. So that's awesome.
You know, one of my friends told me something that really like changed my mind about journaling a couple years ago. They were like, instead of, because how I typically journal, and I still journal this way, is I like write out, like it's like written out, like almost like a letter to myself. But she was like, I journal just in bullet points, you know, like main highlights and stuff like that. And so even if you don't have a detailed explanation of things, you know, just having like bullet points of things is like better than nothing almost, you know. And so I think that for me was really helpful because like I've journaled a lot on and off, and at one point, like especially when the triplets had just come home from the hospital, it's just like, oh my gosh, I don't have time to like do anything, you know? And so I think journaling in that way was really helpful because it's like, okay, I don't have to write 4 pages. I can write 4 lines, you know, and that's okay. It's better than nothing. You know, and it's more forgiving, I think, of time. And you still have that, you know, like freaking out about, I don't know, paying this bill instead of like, oh, I am freaking out about paying this bill. It's this much, and we, you know, something like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I think like abbreviated journaling is really helpful.
That is fantastic advice. I'm gonna have to use
that. It changed my life, girl.
Like 5 groundings. That's pretty cool. I had to try that. I never thought about. Well, I never, you know, concepted that at all. So that's pretty crazy.
I hadn't heard of it either, and I was like, this is really helpful. And then one of my counselors has had me do like a listening thing. It's like a listening kind of meditation that you just kind of like listen through. And she was encouraging me to have like my husband say them, and me just be able to like listen to that and just breathe and like think through those things. And like meditation stuff is really, really awesome too. And just sitting and breathing, I think really helps just a lot. You know, I think in our brains, we can work up stuff. And I mean, me especially, like I can work up situations or work up a fear or something like that, or a worry. But if you just sit and like, just breathe, you know, I think you can think through things a lot more clearly.
Well, thank you so much for
You're
joining
welcome.
us and taking the time to give us some great information and advice. and share your mental health journey.
Yeah.